Dear listeners slash viewers, aka Lewers, welcome to another episode of Dear Rach and Soph with me, Sophie Green, wearing purple, and
Me, Rachael Johns, wearing my red t-shirt with "Reading is my love language" on it. I'm glad you started the intro because I was like, oh, we haven't decided who is going to. So I was just waiting to see whether you spoke or whether you waited for me to speak. So here we go.
look, I'm just taking the initiative is on brand for me, Rach, but also on brand for you, I have to say. So, like, it's
True. We work it out. We get it done.
the great thing
One
is
way or another.
we didn't actually end up both introducing at the same time, which could have been orcs
That
for
would have
everyone
actually been quite
concerned.
funny, don't you think?
Could have been. It could have been. Now, what the viewers can't see is that your lovely dog Addie is at your feet. So,
She
viewers,
is
listeners, if you hear little claws
pretty
going.
asleep now, but who knows, depending on what happens outside the door as to how she reacts.
How have you been, Rach?
Pretty good, actually. We're recording this on a Friday. I have had a great white writing week. I hit 10,000 words today on my new book. So
Fantastic. Are
I'm
you loving yourself?
really, what's that?
Are you loving yourself sick about that?
I am loving myself sick, but I'm also stressed that, when you're loving yourself sick about writing, suddenly something happens, and whether it's the universe or like something happens outside that you need to pay attention to for a bit and it takes you away from that, or whether the writing suddenly goes, no, you're not. You thought you're on track, but no, you're not. So, but I'm just going to enjoy it while I am. I figure I'll get as many words down as I can while it's flowing so that when the inevitable hurdle comes, because I have got to write this book by the end of the year and then my co-written book with Mercedes Mercier by February. And so I'm just trying to, I've decided we're going to work a bit. She's still editing, so we'll be working soon, but I want to get as much of this done before we start on that so that I've got a real, and then I'm maybe trying to write two books at once. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, I'll just say, give me another couple of weeks. So I'm really trying to write this as quick as I can, actually.
Except you are kind of writing two books at once because you have, meanwhile, in Mount Merry-Glen
I do.
going
That's a
on.
once a week thing, and I'm trying to keep that as just crazy and fun as well. So yeah, I am. I might be writing three books soon then.
And it is, look,
What
it
about
is fun
you?
because I'm getting the chapters early for Merry-Glen because I'm doing the copy edit on them.
I'm so glad you are. Thank you.
Well, except would like our audience to know that you don't need a lot of editing. But I'm enjoying it so much, actually. It's like, so I'm feeling the anticipation of what's the next chapter going to bring.
Oh, that's good because every time I send it to you, I think, oh my gosh, I know how busy Sophie is, how many different plates she's spinning. And so what plates have you been spinning this week?
Look, the publisher plate's been multiple plates. So in the week we're speaking, on the Wednesday of that week, it was a work from home day. I got up early. We had a wild wind here, and it woke me up
Mhm.
around 5. I was planning to get up about 5:30 anyway, but I knew that there was something I needed to attend to with a UK publisher who's publishing a book and that I'm also publishing here. And long story short, I started with the emails at 5:30 in the morning, and I ended the night at 10:30 p.m. with a Teams call. And
Oh my gosh, that's
there
the
were
problem when you
various,
work with publishers around the world, right? You
yeah,
you have to get in with their time sometimes.
yeah, and there were various other things going on in between that were nothing to do with that book, but yeah, that was a long day. And then meanwhile, I'm trying to do
Write your
some
own book.
things. So, well, no, that has not started. Like, so in all frankness, I just have not started. I'm not actually worried because, as I'm fond of saying, there is always enough time, and the
Yeah.
story's sitting there right in my skull.
Yeah,
But
so in some ways, while the time, like you're all that you might, once you finally get the chance, it just might pour out of you because you've had it
well,
like building up.
kind of, yeah. And also, I'm really looking forward to writing it. So
Yeah.
it's not as if I'm
It'll be
thinking,
like a
oh,
treat, not a and that's possibly, I was thinking, is that a little bit like, because your day job is not writing. I mean, it's writing related, and you do writing in your day job, like I assume, like blurbs and obviously your
oh
copy
yeah,
editing and all that kind of stuff, and
yeah.
all that. But it's not that your own novel writing is not your day job. So I imagine, does that still feel then like it is a bit of a treat and a hobby that you get? Because I'm not using hobby in a derogative term. I'm saying like when I wasn't published and I had little kids and stuff, my writing time I so looked forward to because it was my, joyful reprieve from everything
Yeah.
else on my plate. So is that a bit how you feel about your writing?
It is, and I feel that way about writing about music as well because I do a lot of writing there. Whenever I post an interview, I'm also writing several hundred words to go with that interview
Yeah, you do a
post.
lot of writing. And I should
So, yeah.
I just want to clarify, like, just because this is not your day job, writing a novel a year is a full-time job as well. But I just meant like, does it feel a bit more fun
Rachel,
kind
I
of thing?
understand exactly what you like, but I also know that I look for so there are, for example, when I'm writing a music post, whatever it is, that's really enjoyable to me as well.
Yeah.
Especially now that I've let go of trying to make it SEO friendly. So I went through this period of thinking,
Oh,
oh, I need
interesting.
to try to make this, SEO friendly, and is that search engine optimization, if anyone's not familiar with the
Mm.
term. And so structure it a certain way. And I wasn't treating the post as pieces of writing the way I used to. I also
Yeah.
wasn't sure anyone was reading it. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm so much happier if I just write it as a piece of writing. It flows more quickly and smoothly.
Mm.
And so I will just now think, how do I want to start it? Same as with a book. How do I want to start it? Right, off I go. And then it doesn't take as long, apart from checking technical details to do
Yeah.
with writing credits, that sort of thing, or producer. But otherwise, it's just a piece of writing. And then I think, great, well, I'm happy with that piece of writing, whereas I wasn't happy with the other piece of writing.
Well,
It
that's so
took
good.
longer too. Like they were
That's
clunky.
so interesting. So,
Yeah.
like, because you're saying and I know we've got some reader questions to answer today, but I just want to go down this rabbit hole. What
Yeah.
is that what I mean? Is that,
Yeah.
um, because you're saying like because of SEO, you were trying to write so that you'd appear more in search engines, blah blah blah, so the platform would grow, and it's making me think. And I said we were not going to speak about this possibly before we started, but it's making me think how so long, and when I mean so long, I mean like the last 5 years to a decade authors have been like told, build your brand, go on social media as much as you can, find the right, hashtags, all the different tricks and stuff to try and get seen.
Mm.
And that's also a trick to get seen, right?
Yeah.
The SEO stuff. Yet I feel like what we're sort of hearing a bit from authors now and people sort of fighting back against the whole social media need to be so creating content on there is that they're putting the effort back. Like, isn't it more important to write a really great book and make connections through that? And I feel like that's what you're doing with your writing. You're relying on actually, instead of, you know, those things, algorithms and stuff that really none of us exactly know if they're actually going to hit the spot, you're
Yeah.
actually relying on writing a really good piece of or really good article, and that people will read that and they'll enjoy it and then they'll come back for more and it'll grow from there. And I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh, thank you. But also, what was prompting me to do it was that I had signed up for Yoast SEO. So I do my country music website in WordPress, and then
Yeah.
I use that content on Substack and Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So it's a piece of writing. I will write it in Word, then I'll put it into those various places. But when I put it into WordPress, so the SEO thing that was checking, I researched this and it was like this is going to help, and I do have good SEO on the website, and it pops up. And I should say there's a music festival that's been announced called Sunburnt Country. Now my music platform is called Sunburnt Country Music. I've had it called that for a few years. This festival is in Australia. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure.
Surely they could have done a Google if it like,
No, Rach, they know I exist. Like,
exactly, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Because like if they don't, like you would, it's like when we're choosing a title for a book, right? Well, I usually do. If I've come up with a title, I'll then go and see if it's already been a book. And often that doesn't matter. It has, but it depends on the genre, how long ago, and all that sort of stuff. So it's the first thing you do when you come up with a name for something. Surely you
Especially
check
because
whether
I've been
someone else
working.
has already got it.
Yeah, especially because I've been working on SEO for a while. So if you do Google Sunburnt Country Music, I will come up as on the first
Mm,
page of Google search
yeah,
results
that
as
sounds a
book
bit
search.
dodgy to me.
Well, I had a music publicist call me today, incensed on my
Oh,
behalf,
oh, good.
and just
I'm
say,
incensed too.
"I can't believe they've done this. I can't believe no one's contacted you because they were going to do it." And not only that, I was sent a press release about it,
Mm.
announcing that it exists. And they've got, so my URL is sunburntcountrymusic.com because you can't get a .com.au unless you have a business, and theirs is sunburntcountrymusic.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, really, .com.au.
So
Mm.
anyway, interesting times. But initially, I was annoyed, and then I thought, well, great, people who are searching for them are going to
Yeah,
find me.
they'll search for you too. They'll find, it won't, I don't think it'll be a detriment to you.
Unless the festivals are badly run and everyone complains online.
True. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
But back to the SEO thing. So I've been using the SEO for a while. It does work. I know that because I can see the search results there. If you Google an artist, a music artist, an Australian country music artist, if I have interviewed them, even if you don't put interview in the search terms, quite often I'll pop up amongst the first search
Yeah.
results. So I was doing all of this, but then what happens is this Yoast SEO thing it's a plugin, and it will give you a traffic light system for the SEO in the article, but also on the readability of it. And it kept giving me red, and the reason was because I was writing the way I write, and it was saying the sentences are too long.
Yeah.
You're using too many connecting phrases.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that, and for a while I thought, okay, well, I'll do what it's saying, and I'll make
Yes.
a sentence short. I just thought, I'm doing all of this to please some search engine full of people who may never find their way to the website, and I'm not enjoying writing this anymore. So I'm just going to ignore it and get the red light.
And that's the key.
Right.
I was going to say, like, I'm not saying that, having a social media platform doesn't work to some sort of extent, and that, it's not completely worthless putting effort into that. I'm not saying that. And I'm also not saying, I wasn't saying that, the SEO stuff wasn't working. But I think you're right in that, is the cost of the creativity and the cost of enjoyment of your own worth the flip side of what it might bring?
Well, the narrative voice just wasn't me anymore. So,
Yeah.
well, stuff it. If people don't want to read it, they don't want to read it. That's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
They're a video anyway.
Before we go on to our reader questions, I just wanted to give a quick update because when you said Word and that you write in Word, it reminded me that I had told people, probably they'll have heard it before, that I downloaded Scrivener again. Lucky I already had the license. And, was going to try and attempt to write this novel in Scrivener. I don't think I even finished the first chapter, and it was annoying me the way it looks in Scrivener. And I still couldn't go. I just couldn't work it out. I couldn't be bothered to do it. So I'm back to trusty old Word, writing chronological order. Yeah.
Well, it's like I have colleagues who have multiple screens at work, some two, some three. I can't do it. I have to have one.
Just got to know what works for you. And then, I'm sure, as I said, if I was Rachel Treasure who was writing it using Scrivener, I would like to sit down with her or Karina May or someone else that we talk to, about, and just say, can you show me how to do these few little things? And then maybe I would, but I just don't have the patience or the time to learn even the smallest little things.
But with your writing, it's also to what end? Like, you're already
that's
a highly successful, productive author. We already talked about the projects you have on the go simultaneously. Is using Scrivener actually going to make life better for you?
I don't think so. I've just given up on that for now, and I still haven't got the dictation thing tried really either, because with the lovely microphone that I bought that Stella Quinn recommended, I haven't been able to work out how to get a micro SD card. I keep finding ones that are big, so I haven't even tried that yet either. I'm just going ahead with the standard way that I used to write for now.
Also, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly, but I do know occasionally I feel my hands go like.
Oh, that's right. I think
and I think, we've talked to people who do use dictation. I think someone recently said, and that I don't want to get to the point where I have to use it without having trained myself a little bit beforehand. So I do. It is something that it's on the to-do list as definitely trying to have a play with that by the end of the year. The other thing is, though, everyone says it's faster, right? But I do feel like no matter what way you do it, you have to, learn to adapt and do that. And at the moment, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing about the hands is that because I haven't been in your writing setup, I don't know about from an ergonomic point of view.
Yeah, true. They're not too bad. Look,
all I'll say is, and for anyone watching, you'll see this. So this is the yoga teacher part of me coming out, and I have badgered Rach about not saying bad back in the past. So if you're a long time listener,
I didn't say anything bad about my hands.
But I've actually did it to a colleague, because the angle of the wrist relative to the elbow and therefore the shoulder is very important. So as you're typing, the wrist should be lower than the elbow, and that way you can type without strain.
Oh yeah, they are. They
Okay.
are when I'm standing, but I'm standing now, so I'll check again when I. But good.
You
Thank
see.
you. As I
So the
said, they're
thing
not
is,
really an
so
issue, but I know that they could be an issue, and so
yeah.
I don't want to, you know, I just figure it's a good to have an insurance plan, considering this is my only income.
And also, just as another little tip, just in case you're not doing this. So I learned piano from a young age, and my piano teacher taught me to pretend I was holding an orange and then turn my hand
Uh,
upside down.
yeah.
And
No, I'm
that,
definitely not doing that properly.
okay, that with the lower angle, so lower than the elbow, that is better than typing flat. So if you're typing flat, that's going to strain the tendons in the fingers.
Yeah.
If you're typing like you're holding an orange, just give
Cool.
it a
I'll
whirl.
remember all those little things. So if we've already covered so much just random stuff, and I love it. I mean, as much as I love talking to guests and hearing about other people's writing process and the different issues that we discuss when we have a guest, I love just chatting to you because you never know where we're going to go, and I love
Right,
it.
that's right. Well, so shall we go to our questions?
Yes, I suppose we better.
So this is a listener, and I think she's also a writer, Lucinda Ellen, who sent us quite a few questions. And Lucinda, thank you so much
Yes.
for listening to the podcast. I know you're a long time listener. And in this case, you're a long time listener, first time caller with these questions. So we have some really great in-depth questions. So I'm going to read the first one, which is about the term publisher. Lucinda said, I thought the publisher was a company, but lately I've started to realize that the publisher is also a person. Can you talk a bit about what a publisher person does? I think I understand it in terms of what the company does, but I'm curious about the role of a person publisher and what they do. So obviously this question is for me because I am a book publisher, but Rachel has worked with several publishers, so and publishing companies. So please feel free to.
Something I didn't really understand either, I have to admit, until I
Yeah.
actually was in it myself. So it's a good
So
question.
it
Yeah.
is. So the noun publisher, when it's relating to a company, is kind of shorthand for publishing company. That's where the confusion
Mm.
comes in. Is that, and you can say my publishers, but the way we use it, particularly in Australia, where we have people who are publishers more than in the United States and the United Kingdom. So in the United States and the United Kingdom, someone who has my job would more likely be called a senior editor.
Yeah.
And
So
editors,
what is your title?
publisher.
Okay, so you're like,
Yeah.
and does it specify what, like, non-fiction publisher, or it's just a
I
publisher?
used to be non-fiction publisher, but I'm now publishing fiction as well.
But
So
so you
as
now just publisher.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can have publisher and then you can have associate publisher. So that's more about like just a tiered thing for promotion. You can have a commissioning editor, which is someone who does the sorts of jobs I do, but often they're also editing other works, other
Yeah.
authors' works at the same time. So
So hang on, can I just ask a question?
yeah.
Say I was a commissioning editor,
Mhm.
right, and you're a publisher.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you like I might edit for you and I might also commission stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's really more about longevity and
And how,
ranks. So you go
seniority and
from
stuff like that.
senior editor, commissioning editor, associate publisher, publisher,
Cool.
that sort of thing. If you're going through those ranks in a publishing company, often people are just moving in and out of jobs and they're not
Yeah.
actually doing that. So the person publisher in the magazine industry is different. So in the magazine industry, the publisher is the person who gets in the advertising money. And I learned that from, we forgot to mention, we were going to talk about books we were reading. I'm reading
Oh yeah.
When the Going Was Good by Graydon Carter, who edited Vanity Fair for years after Tina Brown did. When I was a much younger person, I was obsessed with Spy magazine, which Graydon founded and ran for several years. Spy magazine is where the term short-fingered vulgarian first appeared for Donald Trump, because Graydon wrote it. So Spy was a satirical magazine because I used to read Mad magazine when I was a kid. I loved Spy, and I also was reading Vanity Fair at the same time. And Spy would skewer a lot of people who would appear in Vanity Fair, and then I kept reading Vanity Fair. So Graydon's been a hugely influential editor, and he's the one who delineated that really cleanly, that a magazine publisher is responsible for bringing in the advertising dollars, and the editor is the one who manages the content of the magazine. And so magazine editor, like a newspaper editor, is the head of the enterprise, the operational enterprise, whereas in a publishing company, the publisher is not the head usually of the enterprise. You have a publishing director, and then you have a board running that. So,
and sometimes the publisher will edit as well. Yes.
Yeah, like I do. I will structurally edit everything I'm publishing if it needs it. Sometimes it can be the sort of book where what I tend to call information delivery rather than
Yep.
narrative, and that often does not need a structural edit. Or I've had the structural conversation really early on with the author before they start writing.
Mhm.
So I will do quite a bit of editing. Sometimes I do copy editing. Sometimes I will, and I've just remembered something on my to-do list that I was meant to do this week, copy editing a couple of chapters of something for a sampler, and I did not do that. So
Oh,
so now, like, whoops, I'm actually going to make myself a note as we're
okay. Well, while you make that note, I just thought I'll explain. I've had two publishers. Well, apart from some small, like some of my digital stuff, and so I'm talking about my Australian long lit novels that are all in print. I've had two publishers. Well, actually, I've had three, but then one left and one replaced. So I'm in two different publishing companies,
Mm,
and within those publishing companies, it's worked slightly different depending on who was my publisher. So
mm,
I have had both, where currently my publisher at Penguin also does the structural edit,
right.
and she's very hands-on. So she does that first, and then she passes a copy edit onto an editor at
Right.
Penguin. Uh, and then, whereas my publisher at HarperCollins was not an editor, she was a publisher, and she came from sales and stuff,
Yeah.
and she's now the publishing director. Oh no, she's the CEO of Harlequin. I don't know, whatever, the imprint of Harlequin. But so she would talk about the book with me and she'd read it and she was very hands-on, but she got another, they contracted a structural editor for each of the books,
Mm.
and a copy editor. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked, which I think maybe is why sometimes people are confused because they will hear that sometimes someone has a publisher and an editor.
Yeah.
Um, and they're like, huh? But other times they've just got a publisher who does their editing. It really
Yeah.
depends on yeah, the role of the person in that job in the company, right?
Yeah, and very yeah, and on their experience and as I said, in the United States, it's different. Again, they have people who are
Yeah.
production editors, and that's different to the sorts of editing that the editor would do,
Mhm.
senior editor. So, in terms of other things that I might do during my day, I actually don't like. I don't know where to start because no 2 days are the same. But it
Yeah.
can involve lots of phone calls. Actually, that's what a lot of people don't see, and even
And
our
emails.
lots and lots of email from within the company, from outside the company, and that can be to do with sales, subs for whatever pub month. It can be that they need material for a sell-in, that I need to write a bit of copy for a marketing something, or I need to review copy for something, need to review a press release, need to talk to the publicist about the tour, I need to talk to the author about something. So it's a lot of communication back and forth. The overarching goal of all of that is to look after the book and the author as best as possible. At least that's
Yeah.
my way of thinking, and making sure that we are able to communicate with readers and before them booksellers in order to take that book to readers. So I might spend 2 hours a day on the phone,
Yeah, wow.
which is not something that I can say to someone, oh look, here's the outcome of that, but I know for sure, and colleagues of mine who are publishers would say this as well, I am sure, the books don't get published without that time on the phone, particularly
Yeah,
with
yeah.
authors. Like
There's
that's
also care as well. That's one
yeah.
part of your and you've got to speak to agents and all that sort of stuff as
Yeah,
well, right?
and often it's a quick these days. It's a quick Teams meeting with a colleague because we have
Yeah.
colleagues working in all sorts of places. So sometimes, and this happens quite regularly. Do you have 5 minutes now? Yep. Let's chat. So all those things go on, but there's not. It's not like I have it in writing. But at the same time,
Mm.
I have dozens of emails that are coming in from all different people, and
How do you like keep on top of your inbox?
I really don't.
I was going to say, or do you
That's the
don't? Because I
problem.
think about the amount of emails I get from people in publishing and the ones that I send, and I just think if they're getting, yeah, it boggles my mind how you manage to keep up.
Well, I can't really at the moment, and certainly there's been a growth of an email since the pandemic when everyone's very fond of what I call performative reply alling and
Yeah,
performative CCing. So it's just making
yeah.
sure that everyone can see that they're working. So they're going to copy everyone they can think of on that. But then everyone hits reply all, and then suddenly you have all these emails that
You
actually
don't actually need.
didn't need. So there's quite a bit of that. Then there's the acquisitions process. So the acquisitions process and the cover process take quite a bit of time and thought. So the acquisitions process involves considering projects for acquisitions that might come from agents, or they might not, or they might be a new project from an author I've already published. I need to write an acquisitions document, which involves creating a pitch. So that means basically a piece of writing, again, where I ask authors to pitch things and write pitches, and I've given talks about it and still do. But I can give talks about it because I have to do it. And what I will do when writing the pitch is try to write that piece of content so that if we end up publishing it, it will flow through almost to the blurb.
Yeah.
It should be able to do that job of talking to my colleagues the way the back cover blurb would talk to readers.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So so basically I want to make sure that piece of content works hard, which means it takes a bit of thought. It doesn't take a long time to write because that's not the way I write, as previously discussed, but it takes a while to think about, and then I'll sit down and write it. And then all the other things that go into that document, and then going through the meeting, and then the cover meeting. So we spend a lot of time on covers in terms of communication. So talking to the designer, talking to the author, talking to my colleagues, getting feedback from my colleagues, consolidating that, talking to the designer about the feedback. So the cover process can take a lot of work as well. And again, the only proof we have of it is the cover. So I could say, well, it's this many hours that I've spent on that cover.
Exactly. I was just thinking, if anyone listening who's a reader, not a writer, it just shows why books cost the way they do. Like, this is part of it, right? Because the author has to get paid, you have to get paid, the cover designer has to get paid. A lot of people at the other people that we haven't even mentioned at the publisher have to get paid. The bookstores need to earn their living. The warehouse staff need to earn their living. The printers need to earn their living, and paper needs to be paid for. So, it's not that people just think, oh, arbitrary decide books should be this price. They need to be a certain price for the industry to continue, right?
Yeah, and when you put it in those terms, they actually sound like a bargain.
Yeah.
Or the amount of expertise that goes into a book.
Yes. Yeah. That's so true.
So there's a lot that I haven't even actually
touched on. We could probably do a whole episode of that.
What I didn't talk about was reading submissions, and that's what suffers. And so partly what complicates the reading of submissions are the number of people who write to say, why haven't you read my submission?
Yeah.
So and I get that a lot. And
do you respond to those emails, or do you just?
Well, I do sometimes, but it's a thing where we don't want to stop taking pictures at conventions, conferences, those sorts of things, but might have to if that sort of reminding keeps going on, because I understand it takes time, and I understand it takes an inordinate amount of time as far as the writer's concerned. We absolutely get it, but I don't know that a lot of writers actually stop to think that other writers are also communicating that, and those emails take time.
That's true. And what I also think people don't often know, from what I've heard from publishers, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of that reading of the submission actually happens not within your hours of your job. Like,
I just don't. I've just as I've just described all the things I'm doing in a day. I'm reading.
So the reading happens like at your own time, on weekends, or when you're commuting and things like that. Yeah. So if it's a miracle you manage to write a book and do all the other stuff you do.
Yes. Sometimes as I've said before, I don't sleep 8 hours a night. That's part of it.
Yeah.
But we'll move on from this because we've got
lots more questions.
We do. So
it might be a long episode, folks.
Second question is opening chapters. All the advice talks about how important the opening chapters are, obviously, of a novel. I think Lucinda's talking about it, which I get, but also I don't. I understand that obviously you need to get readers interested from the beginning, but so much of the advice seems to be about how the assessments hang on the first chapter. Tons of books I read don't have what I would call a really gripping opening. Maybe that's the genre I read, women's fiction/romance, and I love a quiet novel, she says, right?
I love a quiet novel too.
Or maybe my expectations and understanding of a great opening are higher than what everyone means by this. I've learned that I often need to somewhat push myself to read the first half of a book. They always get better from the midpoint. I am rarely gripped from the first page. So please help me wrap my head around this. while I'm at it, I'd love to know what you think are some of the best first chapters / beginnings you
Oh,
think
we should have
of.
done some research on that.
We should have. Sorry, Lucinda, we've let you down there, but this was a
Maybe we have to
late.
come back. That would be a second part. If we think of them, we'll
Yeah,
have.
because I have
Yeah.
to say this, we booked in this recording and we had a guest, but there was a late scratching of the guest.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
we've
can
made
probably off the top of my head think of a couple. I think even just a great first line sometimes. If
well,
you've got
everyone cites Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
yeah,
It was the best of times. It was
times it was the worst of times.
yeah.
Exactly. And I was just thinking then, one of the lines, I think it was actually, oh, no, it wasn't American Wife. It was Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin. It's a very long book. I wouldn't say it necessarily kicks off like really, really pacey. But
Mm,
the very first line is 10 days after the war ended, my sister Laura drove a car off a bridge.
great. That's a whole
Right?
story.
So then you can go into who was Laura, who's this person talking and all
What was
that.
the
But I'm
war?
still thinking, yeah, why did she drive her car off a bridge? What happened to her?
Yeah.
So this is off the top of my head, and I'm interested to hear what you say, and I'll probably add more in. But I think the way to get away around writing a quiet kind of novel, or not even a quiet novel, but as you said, a lot of women's fiction. I've just kind of had this myself with, I'm just getting some things off my shelf to see if I can um, check any of them. A lot of, I've just had this thought myself because I've started writing my next book, and it's actually a sliding doors type premise. And so obviously in some ways the story really is going to kick off as soon as the story splits into two different realities. But I, as we talk about in writing, wanted to, set up the world, the ordinary world of the main character, to show that she is, what she wants and all this sort of stuff, and what she's gonna, what's at stake, all that kind of stuff, right? Um, and it's taking me probably, 5 chapters to get there, and I'm thinking, oh, is this too slow a start? But I don't think it is. It is, because sometimes you do need all that sort of stuff. I think one of the actual um, bits of advice that sometimes makes people uh, shy away from, having that really deep and meaningful beginning is don't info dump. Sometimes some stuff should be actually told up front. I don't know. I heard a really good, writer say something like that. You know, really choose what you need to keep and what you don't. But I'm going off on a tangent now. But what I'm saying is, if you've got a really strong first line, first paragraph, I think you can have a slower beginning. Also, it's about voice. You need to identify with that character really strongly, and the character needs to feel interesting in some way. I judge a lot of competitions, so not read submissions like you, but I see that the slow starts can sometimes work if you immediately identify with the character and you're invested in
Absolutely.
the character's not boring and all that sort of stuff. So if you're wondering, like, I don't know this person's situation, but if you're wondering, like, why am I getting knocked back, or why am I not getting read, and you think it's because the start is slow, I would look at characterization as well. Anyway, thoughts that you think? Well,
Well, this is also because there's the line she's put in there. The advice seems to be about how the assessments hang on the first chapter. Now, that may mean pitches,
yeah,
right?
well, I read that as like submissions, like whether or not you're going to get across the
Yeah.
line. So
But
something.
there are two separate functions for first chapters going on in her broader question. One of
Yeah.
them is the pitching part of it, you're pitching to an agent or a publisher. The other part, the other strand is appealing to readers, and
Yeah.
those can be two separate
That's a
things.
very good point. Yeah.
So the first chapter of a book that's made it to a bookshop into the hands of a reader is not necessarily the same sort of first chapter that's going to work to get you that agent or publisher. If
Mm.
that makes sense.
Good
So
point. Yeah, it does.
particularly
But
when it's
maybe
your first,
explain it. Maybe
yeah,
explain it a little bit more. Yeah.
particularly when it comes to when it's your first manuscript or first book
Yeah.
that you're trying to get published. So the thing is, the book that's hit the bookshop has been through an editorial process.
Mm.
In order to get into the editorial process, you need to have some material that is going to grip an agent or a publisher so that they can take you on and you can get published.
Yeah.
And not just the agent and publisher, but publishers publishing company. So there's I'm using the shorthand
Yeah.
there for publishing company.
Because for one person you might read it, but then that one person has to then convince everyone
That's
else to
right.
read it and to.
So it can be that the first chapter of your first submitted manuscript is not going to be the first chapter as it ends up being in a finished book, but it does need to be a chapter that gets someone's interest. Now, I agree with you.
Also, because what we've just said, how many submissions you get, right? So
Yeah,
you actually can't, you don't have time unless you see some nugget of gold
yeah.
in those first few pages. You don't have time to read the whole, like a third of it to see if it gets better.
Yeah. So, but I absolutely agree with you when it comes to voice. In that first chapter, it doesn't have you don't have to have a lot going on in order to be gripped by a character. And there's someone who sent me recently. This is someone I've been working with or something else, and she asked if she could send me 3 chapters of a manuscript. Now, it's a genre that I've just started commissioning into, and I'm being deliberately vague because who knows if
Yeah.
anything will happen with this manuscript. But this author has been published in different genres of fiction before. So she sends me these 3 chapters. First line, I just looked at it and went, "Well, I'm in." That's
Yeah.
because
So first lines are very
first
important.
line, and I emailed her and went, "Oh my God, that first line." She said, "I've been carrying it around for years."
Yeah. And I was actually thinking, I think I mentioned it last week, maybe it was the week before. I could not start my book until I had that first line in my head. And as soon as I had a first line, I was off. And so it's the same sort of
Same
thing.
thing, but it's also not a lot has to happen in if you could hook a reader with a first line like that, then it's like, well, you can tell me whatever you like. And so this goes to what I often tell writers, which is that first chapter needs to take the reader by the hand, and
I
first
love that.
page needs to take the reader by the hand and basically say, it's okay. I've got it. So this is the author reassuring the reader that the reader doesn't have to strain in this
Yeah.
experience. So
I
you
love how you
need
always
to
say
settle
that.
the reader in and say,
Makes you feel you're in good hands.
yeah, that's you. I mean, you're in good hands. You just sit back and let your eyes follow the words on the page. I've taken care of everything else.
Yeah.
The info dump first chapters actually demand too much of the reader. They basically say, please, you need to pay attention to everything I'm telling you right here because I'm giving
Yeah.
you all this information and I don't want you to miss anything. And the reader will often think, I'm tired.
Yeah. Whereas I said, sometimes don't be shy of putting backstory in, but I'm not saying like there's a difference. That's the thing, isn't it? I always joke that if I was ever going to write a craft book, it would be called It Depends, because you can have a good story with a lot of backstory in the first few chapters, right?
Yeah, and backstory is different to
Someone
info dumping.
that's someone who knows how to, write their craft and has read lots of stories and knows what they're doing. And then you can have a first chapter with lots of backstory in the that does feel like you're just being whacked over the head. It
Yeah.
doesn't it can't feel like it's um being told all this stuff that you need to just feel like you're swept along and you want to know about this character and you care, why you're being told that their car that they'd had forever used to belong to their granddad. Like you need to know that it's going somewhere. It's not just, yeah, it's hard
So
to
I
find.
think it goes back to your point about tone, because the tone in which the information is delivered is paramount, because info dumping often is just this really flat
Yes.
information dumping. It's not
Yeah.
telling a story. It's
Yeah.
basically trying to just rush out all this information. Sometimes it's because the writer wants the reader to know that they know a lot,
Yeah.
and look, I
Mhm.
look at all this stuff that I have about this character or this story, and I really need you to know it now so that you can think I'm clever and you'll keep reading.
Yeah.
So
But I
that
don't
comes
care if
from
the writer's clever or not.
and also it comes
You
from
know what
ego.
I mean?
So this is about the writer's intention and what their stakes are
Mhm.
in writing the manuscript. It's like if you want people to recognize you're a literary genius, that is a very different intention to wanting to tell a great story to a reader.
And that's a good tip there as well. I did hear this actually today on a podcast that I was kind of was it a podcast? Yeah, I was listening to the shit no one tells you about writing, and they had a writer on there called, I've got it under here. Um, Now it's a Croatian name, so Lidija Hilji. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but she made a point in something that I then went and read on her website that you need to be targeting the right people for your style of book, right? So if you are targeting someone who loves an action-paced first chapter and they're publishing, you know, horror stories and action that's really, you do need to be getting them straight, or a crime or whatever, like you need to probably write differently than if your is literary fiction and you're submitting to someone who, you know, loves reading that sort of fiction, because they will be bringing a different lens to the pitch, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm explaining myself properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because different readerships are looking for different things, and so are different publishers or commissioning editors who are looking for those genres as well.
Which again is, although or like publishers don't necessarily want to have multiple people writing the same kind of book, and agents, don't necessarily want to represent the same client, do look at who is publishing stuff like yours, right? Because they might be interested in a similar kind of genre, not the same voice.
Yeah.
So that you're already a step, you've got a sort of advantage because they do like the kind of book that you are writing. Whereas if they don't publish anything like that,
Yeah.
maybe because it's not what they don't like that kind of fiction.
And it's not just about not liking it or not liking it. It's actually about the expertise of the publishing company and taking that book to the readers. So different genres of book require different expertise on the part of sales teams, publicity, and marketing. So if just say there's a publishing company that's never published romance novels, but they've mainly done literary fiction, but they've seen that romance is popular on BookTok and they want to get into it, they do not have staff who understand the romance readership.
Yeah, that's
Say
true.
that unless it happens.
And that's that difference again between like you're appealing to a publisher, but you also need to appeal to the reader to then continue to sell and to build.
I would say if you're for a writer in terms of the opening chapter, always appeal to the reader first, because
definitely. And publishers and editors are readers, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's like, but I do think a lot of people write manuscripts trying to get the attention and approval of agents and publishers. So that's where we see the info dumping and things where they're trying to show us
that I'm good and I know what I've learned the rules of writing and blah blah blah.
Absolutely. So
I did puck a couple of my novels up just randomly. I had no idea if they were going to be any good first lines, but I'm sticking by again my thing that if you have a good first line, you can then take a little bit longer to get into the story. Actually, I did a radio interview yesterday because I'm going to the Riverina Writers Festival, and I spoke to a journalist, and she said she'd read a couple of my books, and she was reading another one, and she said she reads a lot for work because, like us, she gets sent stuff and that, and she said sometimes it's a bit of a drag and she'll put it down, kind of thing. She said, there's something about your novels, and it was his biggest compliment, that just, I just feel comfortable setting into the world, and I'm happy as soon as I'm in there, and I'm thinking, oh, that's great, because sometimes I get, my novels are too long, and maybe the start is a bit, could be shorter, could be snappier. But like then I get this kind of feedback from readers that they, I enjoy that sort of not slow beginning exactly, but that's why I think the key is character, voice, as you said, and hooking them in the first line or the first page in some way, which doesn't have to mean crazy stuff is going on. It needs to show, a mystery or like a little, even though we don't write mystery, I know what I mean. So I pulled The Work Wives off, which is one of the ones she mentioned actually. And this is the first line. When Sean Reed, CEO of the Energy Co., summoned all employees to the boardroom just before close of business on Friday afternoon, neither Deborah Fast nor Quinn Palladino had any idea that their worst nightmare and greatest wish, respectively, were about to come true. Right. So we found that we know who the two main characters are. We know that they've got something bad or good, and
you have a setting.
So yeah, like that's the first line. Then I kind of set up the world a little bit more, but it's there. Fly in the Nest is probably a little bit more ambiguous or not quite so catchy, but it was 7 o'clock in the morning and I was cutting oranges for Peyton's soccer game when Adrian casually asked me if I'd heard of Nest parenting. Right. So immediately we know it's going to be about Nest parenting. We've got two characters at play, or like Lucette, she's obviously probably a mum because she's cutting oranges for something. So I just think you've got to connect with the character as soon as possible, if that makes sense.
The other difference is Flying the Nest, you have a first-person narrator.
Oh, true.
Work-wise, you have a third-person narrator. So the first-person narrator immediately draws the reader closer.
That's true.
So
which doesn't probably mean everyone should just write it, right?
So yeah, well, except it's less flexible.
That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't mean just, there's pros and cons of all that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it could draw you in and you might hate the character.
Yeah. So Lucinda, I hope that helps with the opening chapters, you can always ask us follow-up questions because we do
Yes.
obviously like getting questions. So if none of
And if
that's
anyone
clear,
else wants to send us more questions,
yeah.
apart from our Dear Rach and Soph writers therapy sessions that we do, we're also happy just to talk ourselves through questions like this. And in fact, we really love it because we like discussing craft and the business. So yeah, ask us anything.
Ask anything, yeah. So this one is she says a much smaller question, naming characters. Do all of yours come fully formed, especially last names? Do you keep lists of interesting names or do you have to trawl through ideas to get them? What about minor characters? Do you just pick a name and stick to it or do you ever change them as you go?
You
So
go first, though.
I'll start with this one. So, naming characters is really important to me because I write recent historical and I want the character names to be appropriate for the eras they are set in. So that means once I know what year the characters are born and I will start making those notes from the start, I will either just have through a sense of it, name the character, or I will go and look at popular baby names from around the time that character was born and just to have a look through, and then it's an instinctual thing of choosing the right name. So I will just go down lists and then I will think, okay, yeah, that sounds right. The caveat to this being that once you're a few books in and
Yeah.
you've named a few characters, that your options become smaller. So, but I've changed main character names after the first draft. I have changed minor character names through. So, one manuscript I managed to call a main character's son the same name as I'd given a main character's son in the previous novel. And that's because the character was named after that the son character was named after my grandfather. So it's a name that I keep defaulting to because obviously it means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And the name is Tom, actually. So,
I love it now.
and I've changed minor characters. I've sometimes gone gleefully all the way through a draft, and then it goes off to edit, and the copy editor comes back and says, "Oh, these names are quite similar," and I think, "Oh, yes, they are."
Yeah, I know. Isn't it weird how you don't always notice that?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
totally was. This happened with.
I
I
had that actually with Lucky Sisters. Like, you tell me yours.
was
Yeah.
going to say Seaside Salad. I had a Brett and a Bert, and it did not occur to me
Brett
that
and Wow,
they were
that's pretty
so
close.
Brett stayed, Bert's become Sol.
I had in Lucky Sisters, so Nora or Eleonora is one of the main characters, and her mum was called Lorna, and I didn't even think that was like, well, that never crossed my mind. But my publisher said, "Oh, are they a bit similar?" And I thought, if you ask that question, then
And they
maybe.
are.
And so I changed it to her to Lillian. But it's also so sometimes there's too many L's or too many I realized I have three Charlie characters in my books. There are various different types of Charlies. Obviously, they're not the same.
And you have over 20 books, so you are going to have to
Exactly.
reuse.
And so I'm not like, I try to steer away from that now, but I've never had a hero called Charlie, and it's a quite cute name. I've had Charlotte, in short for Charlie, in the Patterson Girls. I had a dog called Charlie, I think, and then I had an old man called Charlie. And so I realized someone pointed this out, and I thought, yeah, clearly I like the name Charlie.
It is a great name.
It is. But I find so I do all the things you do. I check baby name sites online to see if I'm looking for a particular era name or if it doesn't immediately come to me. I keep a list of names somewhere in a notebook, but then I always forget that I've done that. I've started, but then sometimes also lose them, keeping post-it notes from book signings because I always think, oh, that's an interesting name. I haven't used that before. And then I forget. And when I'm sitting at my desk trying to come up with a name, I can't think of any names. Absolutely. And so I always look around my office and I'm looking at the names like, oh, there's Anne Patchett there. Maybe I'll have an Anne, but I don't want to call her Anne Patchett because obviously she's a famous author. So I'll go Anne Green because I'll see your book, right? So I do that sometimes. But a name is that's more for minor characters if I'm just trying to come up with I really the main character names are really important to me. If I'm writing romance, I have to absolutely think the hero's name is sexy because
Fair enough.
that's
Yes, yes.
really important to me. Once in not a romance novel, but there was romantic elements in there, I wrote a Nigel love interest. And he was not supposed to be a love interest. He was because I don't think like Nigel's that a sexy name. Sorry to all those people with Nigel sons, Nigel brothers, and anyone who's called Nigel. I made him sexy though, so now anything's good. But I planned on Nigel just being sort of a bit character that came and went, right? Not the not a
Mhm.
love
Yeah.
interest. But then he had other ideas. He stuck around and his name was already perfect for him because I did have a bit of a joke in the heroine, or not the heroine, it's just one of the characters, it's not a romance, main point of view. She said something like when she saw him, oh, she bet his name was Jack or Adam or Matt or something sexy like that. And then she's horrified when he says it's Nigel. So like I kept that. But yeah, so a name that in terms of romances or romances, the hero's name is important to me. The girls' names I often, basically, I have three sons. I had lots of girls' names I wanted to use. So I used up all of them in the first few novels. Um, but I really need to feel the name is right, which is a little bit, sounds a bit, weird and woo-woo because I'm making the character up, right? So that we should be able to give them any name. But immediately, like, the recent example is from my new novel that I'm writing, Someone Else's Fortune. I had done a competition to, and I don't know if I did mention this in the podcast, so sorry if
I
I
think you did.
forgot myself.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I had a name I had to use. Let's just say quickly, and it just wasn't working for me. It didn't feel like the character. And I think that was one of the reasons why I just couldn't start the novel. And then suddenly I thought, I'll just give that name to another character, another character perfectly for that not thing. And I found a name that worked for me for the character. I had to road test a few. I looked up now this person. This is why names can be really important. This person is named by her mum, who is a fortune teller and really into, you know, all new age type things. So I knew that she was probably going to have a name that reflected her mum's personality choices. You
Right.
know what I mean? So yeah, it is really important to me. But yeah, I can't remember what exactly the question was now.
I think so. There's more about also about last names. So on
Oh,
the
yeah,
name of Nigel, so I'm quite partial to the English actor Nigel Havers, who was in Chariots of Fire. So I do think it's a sexy name, but
that's true. It depends who you know with these names too. That can have negative or positive connotations.
but on the subject of last names for characters, I often don't give my characters last names because they're not needed. So I only get
Good
I
point.
I live by the rule of presenting only the information that is needed. So if the last name doesn't come up, but on your point
So
about
true.
about characters, the names needing to feel right. So in Thursdays at Orange Blossom House, I have three main characters: Patricia, Dorothy, and Grace Maud. Now, Grace Maud as a name is nothing I've ever seen anywhere, but the name came through extremely strongly from the start, and then I just thought. And I tried her as a Grace. I actually took the Maud part out. I can't keep calling her Grace Maud, but Grace didn't work. Grace is a different name to Grace
Yeah,
Maud.
it's so different.
And I
Yes.
kept thinking, why is she called Grace Maud? And then it just came to me, she'd had identical twin sister called Ellie Maud. And
Oh,
so I thought, okay, well then it definitely has to be Grace Maud because she has this sister. But the
yeah.
sister's dead by the time the story starts. So then it's this whole idea of them being connected, not just as twins, but they have these names. So the
Yeah.
name of that character was super important. And
And it just came to you.
yeah,
This
and I just
this is
couldn't.
why I have trust the magic written on my arm as well, because sometimes like, you didn't fight that, right? You just went, okay.
Yeah,
She's
I
not
did.
great.
I've
She's great.
realized in Lessons in Love at the Seaside Cell, and I have three main characters. I have four main characters, but three of them have names ending in an E sound: Trudy, Evie, and Josie. And I did think about whether I should change it, and I thought, well, that's
That's who
how
they
names
are.
came to me.
And
Josie
I
is
think that's
definitely a
different
Josie.
enough because they've got very different sounds to the other parts of the word and they sound with different, start with
Yeah.
different.
And then the other one's Anna, and my middle name is Anna. So there you go. Now I think we should. We've
Can I
been.
just say one tip for if you
Oh,
are looking for word like random surnames? I mean, I do the same thing as go if it's someone comes from a certain place, then I'll look up, what surnames are popular in Ireland. But then I'll probably either choose one that's not, in the top, depending on what you need, whether you need a Smith type name or you need something really different. The other thing to do is go to your social media, and this probably works for if you're looking just randomly for a name too. Look at the names of people you know. And it's particularly good if you are a mum and have had accumulated lots of random people over the years on your Facebook through like play groups and different, groups and that, and you don't really know them that well, so you can just use their names. So yeah, check out your Facebook friends list. Or
there you go.
this is the other thing I've done. If you don't want ones that go to your Facebook friend list, click on a random friend, go to their friend list, and go from there.
There you go. So, Lucinda, we hope that helps. Again, follow-up questions welcome. Your last question, Lucinda, is about pitching. Any tips or resources for pitching a story when you have a lot of main characters? Now,
I'm going to leave that one up to you, my dear.
she has mentioned her story. I'm not going to give away too many details. She's just saying she's writing a women's commercial fiction about 5 women, and they have husbands and partners. I'm trying to avoid giving away the storyline here. And she said just naming 5 main characters and their partners takes a lot of time. So I'm struggling to figure out how I get the story in there too. This is in the pitch. But I know both of you don't do a lot of pitching these days, but anything you can help with would be great. A great book.
Sophie listens to a lot of pitches and reads a lot of pitches.
So listen, the thing is, in the pitch, you don't need to mention the husbands. If the main characters are the women, that's who you focus on. And you actually, if you're pitching verbally, so anyone who's listening or watching who's a reader, not a writer, and doesn't know about the pitching thing, so sometimes there can be verbal pitches that take place in person, as like the Romance Writers of Australia what do we call it? Conference, convention?
Yeah, conference.
That's I keep conflating those words, which I shouldn't. Conference. It's coming up in August, so there might be some in-person pitches. But as a publisher, I'm taking some on-screen pitches, and these can often be around 5 minutes long. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're longer. And then there's the written pitches. So if you're doing a verbal pitch, I would actually advise not worrying about naming all the characters at all, because the person you're verbally pitching to is not going to retain that information.
Yeah.
Unless if there's one character in particular who you think is perhaps got a more dominant storyline or you want to mention them, then do that. But it's quite okay to say it's about 5 women, because in a 5-minute verbal pitch, you don't have a lot of time to go into detail, and you'd rather focus on the themes and the plot points if that's important. Having said that, if it's mainly a character study, if it's a quiet novel, as we were talking about earlier, then the characters' names may be more important. I'd just say write it, practice it, test it out on someone else speaking it, not reading it.
Yeah.
Or just start speaking it aloud yourself and just really pay attention to how it feels to keep saying those names. Now, a written pitch is different, because that's kind of acting like a zhuzhed up version of a synopsis, really. You want to, but I still wouldn't mention the husbands and partners.
Definitely. I would said that as well. I'm just thinking, like, in terms of, I haven't pitched for a long time, but the synopsis would be the place to give a little bit about character. But 5 is a lot just to put that in. I'm just thinking the novel that has the most for me, and I know you've written multiple too. Mine's the biggest is 4 for the Patterson Girls. I can't remember if I did a particular synopsis.
And I would also say, Lucinda, she could go and look at the back cover blurbs for our books with these.
Yeah, that's a good idea too.
Bellbird River was my last one with 5. Fairvale has 5. You'll see that we, like, if husbands or partners are mentioned, it's
only if it really affects the plot, right? Like, if it's really like, it was easy for the Lucky Sisters. I only had 2, so what I did is, you know, a intro of them both, that they were twins, and then, because I did just recently do a synopsis for this for an overseas pitch, and I have a very short paragraph on each of their personalities, kind of before I launch into the story. And I just looked where you said about look at the blurbs in the back of books. This is very succinctly maybe the way you could introduce them all. For the Patterson Girls, it says what the whole situation is, but then it says the eldest sister, obstetrician Madeline, would rather be anywhere but her hometown. You know, she's an obstetrician, she'd rather be anywhere than home. So that's a very short line. Violinist Abigail has fled from the stellar career, while teacher Lucinda is struggling to have children she and her husband so desperately want. The black sheep of the family, Charlie, feels her life as a barista and exercise instructor doesn't measure up to that of her gifted and successful sisters. That is you could use something like that.
Yes.
And I'm sure. So yeah, look at the back of our covers. You could use that as the intro paragraph, kind of after you've done a bit about the premise quickly, and then who the characters are, and then so. Well, and it's simple if you can.
Yeah, the pitch is a piece of writing, and it's very difficult. And I made a whole 10-minute TikTok video about it, basically, because.
So follow Sophie's TikToks if you're not already.
And look, if anyone's interested, I can make another version of that, because probably I'm better at making those videos now than I was then. But it is a piece of writing, and I reiterate that because I think a lot of writers, when they've written their manuscripts, they're impatient to pitch, but also there's a sense sometimes of why do I have to know how to do this piece of writing? But also lack of confidence, or alternatively, and also lack of confidence around that piece of writing. I don't really know how to do that. I've written fiction. I know how to write this novel. I don't know how to write the pitch. So to that, I would say that might well be true. And it does take a lot of practice, but this is part of you communicating the novel to readers ultimately. And so
Yeah.
I think if we let go of the idea of it having to be this polished, perfect pitch, just to
Yeah.
be alliterative there, and instead think, how am I going to communicate my novel to readers? That shifts the energy around what you're doing and means
Yeah.
you might actually write from a more free place when you sit down to write the pitch. Because instead of thinking, I have to try to
Get
do
everything in there as
thing
well.
of how am I going to wedge it all? It's actually like if I wanted to convey this very simply to someone who doesn't know me and doesn't know the story, how would I do it? That will come from a different place, and I think you'll find you'll know what you need to put in and leave out. It's highly likely you're going to put in more detail than you need initially, but then that's what the self-editing process is for.
Was she asking pitch and synopsis or just pitch?
Just pitch, like
Okay.
synopsis is the devil's handiwork as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
yeah.
They're brutal pieces of writing, and
But
I
I
don't know.
think what I see in reading synopsises, and I do sometimes read them for the competitions that I judge, is people are trying to get every single plot point in there. So my tip then is to just try and like get the major important parts and the arc of the story, but without the minuet. Is that what I mean? Minutiae? Is that the word I mean?
My tip as an industry professional is that the synopsis will go the way of the dodo, because I actually
Yeah,
think that the pitch is more
way more
pertinent
important.
and more important, and actually more relevant at all stages of the process. I can't, as a publisher, I'm actually, this is why I think it. I don't use synopsis. Like there's no part of me that ever uses a
But no one
synopsis.
has to send you a synopsis if they pitch.
Rewrite a description. So for the marketing material, by that I mean website copy, those sorts of things. But
Yeah,
ahead of that, months ahead of that, we have a document that we need to write called a TI, or a title information sheet, that our colleagues will use, and it will go, and then that will ultimately go into the website. And so that has a keynote and a description, which has the keynote as the first paragraph. Now,
yeah,
I will write that description based on what I've read, any information that the author sent me or the agent has sent me. But any information the author or agent sends when they're initially sending that to acquisitions is not going to be a synopsis. It's going to be a description which is different. And I think the synopsis, that really unwieldy, unappealing piece of writing that just contains all that detail, isn't as useful as a description that doesn't necessarily give away all the story, but does tell you more about why you might want to read that
yeah.
particular book. So I just think the synopsis has outlived its usefulness.
Yeah. A lot of people will be probably very happy
Yeah,
to hear that.
just they're unwieldy. No one has fun writing them. No one has fun reading them. I think they've been used as a proof of life for a long
Yeah.
time, and I've used that. I've described them as that, and now I'm thinking, I don't really. Do we need it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's good.
There you
Well,
go.
that was
Synopsis revolution.
I enjoyed that chat. So it was Lucinda, you said, who sent it to us?
Lucinda, yes,
Thank
yeah.
you, Lucinda, for those really interesting questions, and I hope you found our answers helpful.
Yeah, we look, it's lovely to talk to you as ever, Rach, and to talk about these sorts of subjects. Listeners slash viewers, as we've said, do send us any questions you like. If you'd like to submit to Writer Therapy, by all means, drop us a line or send us a DM or leave a comment or something like that. We are findable all over the place, including on Substack. Dear Rach and Soph is now on Substack. I should mention that.
Yes, please
The
go and
wonderful
follow us.
Annie Bucknell has
Subscribe.
helped us out with that. So Annie from Virtually Annie, if you're a writer who's listening and you need someone who has expertise in setting up websites, Substack, giving you some social media advice and assets, then Annie is the one. So
Yeah, we can't
Annie,
we can't recommend her enough.
yeah, she took all the previous episodes, put them onto a Substack, and now I'm publishing the new episodes there. So you can find us in one place. You can also find them on podcast platforms, of course, and on my YouTube channel. But
Yeah.
in lieu of a website, we have Substack. So,
Mm.
but anyway,
Yeah.
Rach, I'll let you go.
Thanks so much for that chat. I had a lot of fun, and it was good to chat to you again, as usual.
I will, no doubt, chat to you again soon.
I'm sure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.